It takes another second. So I got quite a few people registered for this meeting, so I don't know where everybody is. Dear. Okay, redirecting to YouTube, it says. Only takes a second. It makes it very, it takes another second. That's me talking. So, right, let's get rid of that. And we go back to where we were. Okay, right, lovely. Okay, so let's start off with our tefillah, all right, with our prayer, and then we'll go on from there. ריבון עולמים ואדוני אדונים, אב רחמן וסליחות, מודים אנחנו לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, וקידה בהשתחוויה, שקרבתנו לתורתך ולעבודתך עבודת הקודש, ונתת לנו חלק בסודות תורתך הקדושה, מה אנו ומחיינו, אשר עשית עמנו חסד גדול כזה. על כן אנחנו מפילים תחנוננו לפניך, תמחול ותסלח לכל עבודתנו ועוונותינו, ואל יהיו עוונותינו מבדילים בינינו לבינך, וכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו. Okay. I got stuck with all these beeps happened. Let's start again. יהי רצון לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו, שתכונן את לבבינו לראותך ולבבך, ותקשיב אוזניך לדברינו אלה, ותפתח לבבינו הערל בסודות תורתך, ויהיה לימודנו זה נחת רוח לפני כיסא כבודך כרך ניחוח, ותאציל עלינו אור מקור נשמתנו בכל בחינתנו, שיתנוצצו ניצוצות עבודיך הקדושים, אשר על ידם גלית דבריך אלה בעולם, וזכותם, וזכות אבותם, וזכות תורתם ותמימותם וקדושתם, יעמוד לנו לבן לקשר בדברים אלו, ובזכותם תראיננו במה שאנו לומדים, כמו אמר נעים זמירות ישראל, גל עיניי והביט הנפלאות מתורתך, כי אדוני תן חוכמה מפיו דעת ותבונה, יהיו לו רצון נמני פי, ויגון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. אמן, כן יהי רצון. Okay, so what we're going to do today is a really exciting piece. I think it's really fascinating. It's actually a letter which Rabbi Ashlag wrote to his students when he was in London and away from them. And these letters are absolute fountain of spiritual wisdom. I mean, incredible. They really are incredible. So it's a great privilege that we've actually got these letters that we can learn from them. So just before we begin with the letter, I just want to start off with the words from the Torah, okay, which is where we'll be actually learning. So let me share my screen with the Torah. Okay, great. So we're starting off with Shemot, okay? These are the names of the children of Israel who are coming to Egypt. It's Yaakov, Ish, Ubeito, Bao. With Yaakov, each man and his household they came. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun, Binyamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher. V'hi kol nefesh yotzei Yaakov shivim nafesh. And all the souls that came from the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. Vayosef haya b'Mitzrayim, and Yosef was already in Egypt. Vayamot Yosef v'kol echav v'kol adorahu. And Yosef died, and all his brothers, and all that generation. Bnei Yisrael paru v'yishvatzu v'yudu v'yatzmu bim'od me'od. And the children of Israel fruitful and multiplied and increased abundantly and became strong and very, very much. And the land was filled with them. Vayakom melech hadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada et Yosef. And arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. V'yomer el amo, and he said to his people, Hinei am bnei Yisrael ravatzu mimenu. The people of the children of Israel, they're very, very strong and mighty for us. Hava nichak malo, let us deal wisely with them. Pen yober, lest they get too many. Vayaki tikrenu milchama, and it will be when they call war on us. V'nosaf gam hol sonenu v'nilcham banu v'ala min haaretz. And he will add to us those who hate us and fight against us and go up from the land. Okay. All right. And they placed over them taskmasters in order to afflict them with their burdens. And they built cities of store cities for Pharaoh, Pitom, Ramses. And the more they afflicted them, so they increased and so they multiplied. Okay. And they were in dread because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians enslaved the children of Israel, made them work with the rigor. And they embittered their lives with hard work, with mortar, with bricks, and in all the work of the field, and all the man of their service which they served them was with farech. Okay, we're going to stop there for a moment, and now we're going to turn to our letter, all right, which we're going to learn from Rabbi Ashlag. So we need to, where's my letter? Here it is. Okay, great. Now let's put it a bit bigger. So for those of you who can read Hebrew, you can see it more clearly. If anybody wants a copy of it afterwards, I can always send you one, all right? Because I've got it on my computer. Lichvod b'nei yeshiva datu rabbanim, Hashem alehem yichyu. Okay, and he wrote this, says he was in Warsaw. Okay, so I know the story. What happened was when he came to Eretz Israel, originally, I think it must have been about 1921, he had to come very fast because it was very clear to him that if he stayed in, he'd finished his tikkun, and he and two other companions went to the Rabbi of Porizov and said, we think we finished more or less. And the Rabbi of Porizov agreed and said, what do you want to do? And he said he wanted to, get more work. The others didn't, and they died within a couple of weeks. And it became clear to him that he needed to leave Poland, needed to leave Europe and come to Israel. And he had to move straight away, otherwise he was going to die as well. So he told the rabbini, and they packed up. She was pregnant in the 9th month of pregnancy. Can you imagine? And they got on the boat, and she gave birth on the boat. Can't imagine it. And they came in such a hurry. They didn't have time to collect enough money to bring all the children with them. And so after a few years, when he got some money, he went back to collect the children who'd been left behind with relatives. Whilst he was there, he went to visit his teachers and whatever. He went to visit the yeshivot and tried to persuade very much. He tried to persuade whoever would listen to come to Israel, because he had a premonition that the Holocaust was going to come. So obviously he was there at that time when he'd gone back to Warsaw, and he's writing to his students, okay? And this is what he's written. Lichvod b'nei hayeshiva datu rabbanim, Hashem aleichem yichyu. Todot l'Hashem shesati mikem shlosha mechtavim. Thank God that I got from you 3 letters. Okay, and then he goes on that maybe there should have been 4 letters, and goes on about how to get the letters and whatever. All right, so there's just a bit of details of problems with the post, the first paragraph. ואצטער מאוד על האיברים המדולדלים, שסיבות חיצוניות גברו עליהם מלהסתפר עמכם, ייתן השם שיחזקו ויוכלו להתחבא עמנו ויהי השם עמהם. And he starts off his letters by saying he's always got some news that one or two of the students who had been with him previously, before he'd gone back to Warsaw for this period of time to pick up his other children, he said some of the students had left the framework because external reasons had overcome them, and they were no longer able to join with the others. Now, these external reasons could have been that the pressure of the studies early in the morning, they used to get up at 1 in the morning and start studying between 1 and 2 in the morning, and then study till dawn, say Shacharis, and then go off to work. He did not approve of people not working. He felt people should earn their own living. So the studies were on the expense of sleep, and you can imagine how difficult it must have been. They were very poor, and also there was also opposition to Rav Ashlag's work because he was really treading a very new path. So he says, "Okay, I'm sorry to hear about people who have left, limbs have got weakened, okay, for external reasons, and no longer are joining with you. May God strengthen you and strengthen them, and may them be able to rejoin us, and may God be with us." Be with them. ואני מבין שאינכם עוסקים כל כך בייחודים דמוך בליבה כחפצים. And I understand that you're not practicing as much the unification of the mind with the heart as I would wish. What's the heart and mind? The mind is the desire to receive from the aspect of we want knowledge, we want control, we want to understand, okay? We want to have control over our lives by this knowledge and understanding. I think this is, it's a huge will to receive, especially in the modern world. It's colossal in the modern world. And what's the tikkun of the mind? The tikkun of the mind is to go in faith, okay? All right, to go in faith. Veliba, the heart, the will to receive of the heart, is the desire to sensual desires, to enjoy oneself, okay? I'm not saying enjoying yourself is wrong, but it's got to be for the sake of giving, all right? Not just pouring in sensual experiences, unlimited. And the tikkun of that, of the heart, is learning to give unconditionally. And these two aspects of the human being, the mind and the heart, of faith and learning to give unconditionally, need to work in unison. They need to work in an integrated way within the human being, okay? So he's telling them, he understands that they're not doing enough of that integrative work of faith and giving unconditionally as he would like. Nevertheless, do the best you can. And the salvation of God is in the twinkling of an eye. And the most important thing that stands in front of us today is to all the companions to unite. All right? Now, those of us who were with me last week know that I spent a lot of time on the concept of brotherhood, because a prerequisite for the children of Israel to go down to Egypt into slavery was that they should have brotherhood. All right, that it was the brotherhood that got them out through slavery. All right. So before he's going to talk about the exile in Egypt, he's talking about Avat Haverim, joining together in brotherhood. And if anybody missed the shiur last time, I made a podcast on it, okay? And you can find it on my website. I make a tremendous effort in this, as much as you can. Because in this uniting together, there is enough there which will overcome any lacks that we have. So joining together is absolutely crucial before redemption. Ve'ita, and it's written in the Masechet Makot, Talmid Shigola Golin et Rabo. So this is a law dealing with when somebody's killed somebody accidentally. If a student, of a rabbi, God forbid that happened to him, then of course he had to be exiled to a city of refuge, all right? One of those cities of refuge where they would have to go until the Kohen Gadol died, okay? And the rule was that if a student was exiled, Golin et Rabo, his rabbi also was exiled with him. Perush, explanation. The sages had a real problem. איך אפשר שישלטו קטרוגים בתורה ועבודה של התלמיד, שיגרשו אותו ולהסתפך בנחלת השם, אחר שהוא דבוק ברב אמיתי? And what they're really asking is the sages really had a problem with this situation. How is it possible that such a bad thing could happen, okay, to somebody who is so united, so close with a true Rav, with a true sage? How could such a terrible thing happen in that his Torah and his service of God was so bad or so weak or something that he got to a stage where by accident, okay, it was by accident, nobody said it was on purpose, but even by accident, that such an accident could happen to him. How could this possibly happen? And on this they explained, and they said when the Talmid goes down in his spiritual level, it happens because he is no longer valuing his sage as he did previously. All right? So it seems to him as if his rabbi is no longer such a great rabbi. He's lost his faith in his rabbi. All right? And since that's what he thinks, Harei Be'emet came. That's what it turns out to be. Because the whole connection between the sage and the student depends on the fact that the student has faith in his rabbi. And if he thinks to himself, well, this rabbi isn't all what I thought he was, or he doesn't, something's happened in his relationship. And the problem is with the student, not with the rabbi, okay? That he's no longer valuing him, okay? Maybe, he wants more intellectual stuff, I don't know, whatever, but he's no longer values the rabbi. Then because in himself, that's what he feels, that's what turns out to be. Klomar, shelo yuchal lehenot mirabo, ela kafum mad masha'eh belibo. He can only receive benefit from his rabbi to the extent that he values him. And if this is the case, that his faith in his rabbi has diminished for whatever reason, he no longer values the rabbi as he did, Ein lo ela rav shaful ve'od. Then it appears to him that his rabbi is somebody who's, not worthy. Okay, remember, we're talking about a Rav Amiti, a true sage. So the problem is with the student, not with the rabbi. And because of the way he's seeing his rabbi, therefore his rabbi is exiled with him. Okay, so this is a problem. All right. So why does he bring this up here? Because if we go back a moment to where we were with, wait a minute, probably I didn't do that right. Share screen. Yeah. If we go back a moment to where we were, what have we got? We've got the children of Israel coming into Egypt, okay, into potential exile out of the land of Israel. You've got Yaakov with them. Yaakov is the tzaddik, all right? So long as they are connected with Yaakov, they're going to be fine, all right? Because they value Yaakov. He's the tzaddik. They're going to listen to him, all right? Then the light of Yaakov is going to protect them, all right? Same thing, Yosef. Yosef was also the great tzaddik, the tzaddik. So long as he was alive and protecting them, okay, they were sheltered from slavery. The Egyptians were not able to enslave them at that point. Only when it says Vayamot Yosef, after Joseph died, in other words, but so long as they still valued him and related to him as their rabbi, as their sage, as the tzaddik, then the light of the tzaddik would have protected them, okay? It's when they no longer valued his memory or valued what he'd said and his influence was diminishing, then you get Vayakom Melech Hadash, then a new king arose, okay? So the problem, it wasn't just the physical death here that is talking about. It's talking about how you value, all right? So for example, Rabbi Ashlag is no longer with us physically, but so long as we value him, his light will shield us, save us, and guide us, okay? The most important thing is the value, how we value our sages. So we go back again to where we were. Okay? תחילת גלות מצרים והשיבוד מתחיל מהפסוק ויקום מלך חדש על מצרים אשר לא ידע את יוסף. The beginning of the exile of Egypt and the servitude therefore begins from the phrase, from this sentence, and a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. Perush, explanation. שנתגלה שליטה חדשה במוחם של כל אחד ואחד. שליטה חדשה מקרוב. כי נפלו ממדרגתם הקדומה. So what we're seeing here is that a new governance, okay, arose in their minds of each one. Who are we going to listen to? Okay, remember that the external world for them was very enticing. Egypt externally was, the great technological whatever, okay? And so long as they valued the values of Yosef, the technology, the culture of Egypt couldn't get to them. But when they stopped valuing him, V'lo yadat Yosef, who's it talking about? It's talking about them, okay? All right, that they weren't valuing Yosef any longer, then they fell from their previous spiritual level. As we learned, in the same way, that a Talmud, a student who's no longer valuing his rabbi, then such an accident could happen to him, God forbid, that he kills somebody by accident, okay? And his rabbi is exiled with him, in the sense that he's no longer valuing his rabbi. Mimele lo yadut Yosef, same thing. They were not valuing him. Klomar shelo isigu oto ela kafi ma sheshi'u belibam. They now only attained his light according to the way they were valuing him in their heart. V'lachen tziru belibam tmunat Yosef kamohim atzmam. And at this point, remember, Yosef and the brothers were no longer living, and they imagined Yosef in a sort of image as how they themselves were. Okay, they no longer had the ability to remember what the tzaddik really was. So they just imagined that Yosef was some sort of, guy very similar to themselves. So at this point, they no longer knew, they no longer had that connection. Remember, the word to know comes from the idea of da'at, of connection. All right. So they were no longer connected with Yosef, and that's how the servitude began. For if that was not the case, for sure the tzaddik, the influence of the tzaddik, would have been able to shield them. It would not have been possible for them to have gone into exile and servitude. Because the main problem with the exile of Egypt was, in fact, it was a spiritual exile. Okay, so we're going to find out in a minute. I know that in the Torah it emphasizes, the taskmasters and the bricks and the mortar and what have you. But the truth of the matter is, it was a spiritual exile. I don't think, from what I understood, that the other exiles were spiritual ones. They were physical, and they were very hard. We're still in one, in some sense. Okay, but the Jews, the children of Israel, kept who they were, but in the exile of Egypt, it was not only physical, it was also spiritual, and that was definitely a problem. ומפורש שעבודם בחומר ובלבנים. Avudam, Ivdum maybe, Ivudam, I can't remember, Shibudam. And we explained that they enslaved them with homer, with mortar, and with bricks. Chomer. What is chomer? Usod avon hachamur shedanin bezel hamachshava. What is the serious sin? This is the serious sin on which a person is judged only in his thought. Now, most sins, okay, we only are chayav, liable for if we actually do it. So a person, for example, God forbid, can think, oh, I would like to steal something from Woolworths, okay, but he doesn't actually do it. He stops himself from doing it. He doesn't do it, okay, then he's not liable for anything. He didn't actually steal anything. He's not liable. But there is one sin where a person is liable. What's that? It's idol worship, okay. That is a sin where a person is actually liable, even if he just thinks about it. Now, what is idol worship here? Idol worship is where I'm not going to listen to God, I'm going to listen to myself. Okay, when you put yourself there instead of God, all right, that's also idol worship. So here you can see that they're enslaving them by their chomer, they are not enslaving them to let go of their connection with God. Bilveinim, Soda Tshuva. And then the bricks from the word lavan was, okay, they fell into their will to receive for themselves alone. They fell into a type of ego, centric worship or whatever you want to call it. Okay. Or bilveinim, but then they merited to a type of tshuva, love from the word lavan. Shezachul rachamim elyonim, and they merited to mercy from on high. And for the moment, they did get the higher light because of their faith in their holy fathers. All right, they didn't forget everything. And they became pure again from their sins. But they couldn't hold on to that. And they kept going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. Because this, in all the ways of serving God. Okay? Sadeh is like the consciousness of the Malchut. So in all the ways that we can serve God, they kept gaining it and losing it. Losing it, then getting back again, and then losing it and getting back again. They couldn't hold on. Okay. Why was this? And this problem with the ability to serve God extended to all the other mitzvot. Okay, so we had the whole problem with the idol worship, and then it went on to all the other mitzvot. And they were like, in this sort of middle situation. Okay, one moment getting back into holiness, next moment losing it again, getting back, losing it. I hope as we're telling the story of what happened in Egypt, you can actually see how this is totally actualia, is completely reality, and we can see exactly how we all fall into our own pharaoh. Okay, our own relationship with a tzaddik. And I heard Rav Gottlieb give a talk, in which she said, you can actually relate this whole thing. First of all, you can look at the whole thing inside yourself completely. And the tzaddik inside yourself, the sage inside yourself. It can be the presence of God within us, which is, the godly soul. All right. Are we listening to our godly soul? Are we valuing our godly soul? If we're not valuing it as we should, then we can get enslaved by our animal appetites, by our wills to receive for ourselves alone. So, this whole scenario of how the tzaddik can protect, we can certainly take this all inside ourselves and say, okay, instead of the outside rabbi or the sage or somebody, we can actually think of it in terms of the soul within us. If I am valuing my soul within me, then I will be able to stay in holiness. And if I'm not valuing it, but I'm just thinking, then that will lead me into being caught by my will to receive myself alone, into that servitude. Okay. All right. And then, of course, we wake up again and we get the tshuva. Because we've got zechut avot, Bezrat Hashem, and then we go, and then we fall back again, and we go round and round and round. And then this whole issue begins to affect all our mitzvot. This particular klipa, which stops us doing tshuva to the end. Okay. This one which sort of allows us to get some light, get some tshuva, and then we lose it again, is called, this is the klipa of paro. Okay. Otiot paro is pera. Okay. Pera what's the pair? Pair is the malchut, okay? The malchut, the governance. How am I governing myself? Okay? Perush the bechinat malchut shebamochi nikra peh. Because the malchut of our consciousness is called the pair. That's just, you can map this view onto the face, and then they all get names related to the face. So, for example, Chochmah is eyes, and Bina is the nose, and I'm wrong. Bina is the ears, the nose is Tiferet, and the mouth is the Malchut. Okay. So now we've got Pera, the Pharaoh. Okay, what's this wretched Pharaoh? All right. So Dohu Bechinat Hachrav Askama. And is issue of this Pharaoh, is he doesn't allow this sentence to be enacted. That that his word should not be chulin, that his word should be, if he says he's going to do something, he carries it out. And whatever comes from his mouth, he's going to do. But what is happening with the Pharaoh? It's like Pharaoh is like a blockage between the head, which wants to be in Kedusha, and the body, which wants to carry it out. Okay? Paro is also oref, the neck. Okay? So it's like there's a block between the head, which wants to be in holiness, and the body, which actually has to do the work. And so what's actually happening is that the Pharaoh is sort of like allowing them to do something, but he stops it going through completely. So in the exile of Egypt, there was governance to this Pharaoh, to this bad way, this bad level of governance. And they kept falling back down again. Even though they did merit to some enlightenment from the highest sfirots, they couldn't get it through into action. Because this Malchut, which had been taken over by Pharaoh, by the will to receive oneself alone, is the opposite of the Malchut of Kedusha. Okay. So again, so here he's telling us the neck, okay, which is the letters of Pharaoh, would literally block the light, which should have been coming down from the head. And it was taking away all the light which had begun to come to Israel, and then it wouldn't be able to carry through. And this is the reason why there's in the Gemara, it says that no servant was ever able to get out of Egypt, to escape from Egypt. Because you see, it's much more difficult to deal with. It's a very, very difficult klipa. If you don't even have the idea of doing something in holiness, all right, then you don't imagine, then you can see where you are. All right, you say, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm not there. You know where you are. But it's like all the time you're under this illusion that, oh, I can just deal with that. That's fine. I know what to do. But when it comes to it, you fall down again. They could do a bit and then they kept falling down. So all the time they were under this illusion that they were, only another bit, and they would be able to serve God. So this problem with the Pharaoh is that the mind gets the enlightenment, but the body can't bring it through. Okay, if you guys got any questions, for goodness sakes, call out. All right. So, because Pharaoh made this sort of like this witchcraft. But that's in, we can see the whole thing within ourselves. You really can. That you see, all Rabbi Ashlag teaches that all the elements which we find in the stories, Moses, Moshe, Pharaoh, all these elements are within ourselves. Okay, so we have that klipa of Pharaoh, and it's like a witchcraft. Okay, we get enticed by it because it does give us some things. It doesn't give us, if it didn't give us anything at all, we'd be much wiser to its antics. But it does. It gives us some light, okay, but doesn't allow us to follow through. As the sages have said. Okay, right. Now, we didn't get to that one. And now, from this, we can understand the phrase, V'ani yadati, ki lo yitain etchem melech Mitzrayim leilech v'lo b'riyot chazaka. Because I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go except with a strong hand. All right. Perush. Explanation. That God announced through Moses, his servant, ששום יד חזקה וכוחות שבעולם לא יועילו על קליפה רעה זו, מפני שאינה נכנעת, אלא מפני השם יתברך בכבודו ובעצמו. God announces through Moses, his servant, that no power in the world has any help at all against this klipa, this bad light, if you like, shell, okay, at all, because it does not yield except to God himself. Only God, in his glory and his essence himself, can free us from this klipa Pharaoh. That's really interesting. Because you would think that a klipa which stops us doing anything at all would actually be worse. But he's saying no. A klipa which sort of allows you to get some light, but doesn't allow that light to pass through into action, is actually the hardest one of all. And it doesn't yield to anything else other than God himself. So what we say, this is what we say in the Haggadah, ani v'lo shaliach, ani v'lo malach, ani lo shaliach, ani v'lo saraf. Okay, God himself had to come and get us out of Egypt, not with an angel, not with a messenger, not with a saraf, only God himself, because only God himself can free us from this klipa. וזה סוד ושלחתי את ידי והכיתי במצרים וכולי. ונתתי את חן העם הזה בעיני מצרים וכולי. So let's go and have a look at all those sentences in the Tanakh. 1 second. Where are we? Here we go.
Yedidah.
Yeah.
Why is it when Joseph was alive,
Yeah,
that the Jews did not have these problems?
because while Joseph was alive, he was the tzaddik of their generation. Okay.
So they respected him and loved him and followed his teachings, and that's okay.
Exactly. And even after he died, so long as they still remembered his teachings and valued him, they could not get him enslaved by the Egyptians. It was when they no longer remembered him as he truly was, but they began to sort of imagine him in their minds as being something like themselves. That's when the troubles began.
You know, it's interesting because the focus has always been in my learning that it was the Pharaoh forgetting. That Joseph,
Right.
right? That
Yes.
Joseph, who Joseph was. I never even thought about the people forgetting.
Well, Rav Ashlag, you see, this is what I think is fascinating about this letter, is that Rav Ashlag actually says, really puts all the emphasis on the people. Yeah. And, you know, when he does that, then you can relate it to yourself. It's no longer an external thing. Oh, yeah, well, there was a new king who didn't remember Joseph and all that business. But instead he's saying, wait a minute, where were we in this? And I think that's a fascinating idea, that what is my relationship? How can the influence of Pharaoh, how could he have got such a hold on them? Because, I mean, what was the big deal, really, between you and me? If they didn't like the new regime, they could have just got up and gone. Why didn't they just get up and go? I mean, I don't mean after they would already been enslaved and they were really slaves and they didn't have any, you know, any way to defend themselves, whatever. But when we're talking about the beginning of the slavery, remember how they came down to Egypt with carts? All right. What was the big deal? They could have simply said, oh, you know what? I don't think that we like this new fellow. He keeps putting these new rules in. Come on, everybody, pack the carts up. Bye. Go back. What was to stop them?
So true.
Yeah, and what was stopping them was their own, I think, their own disbelief in their own spirituality, in their own soul. They had lost their value of their inner soul because they no longer valued the influence of the tzaddik. They thought that they needed, like, somebody in a sense to replace the tzaddik or something, and they were replacing it with the Pharaoh, with the will to receive for themselves alone. And they got caught spiritually. That was what really caught them. The physical enslavement didn't begin at the beginning.
And then they do the same thing with the golden calf.
The golden calf,
wasn't that a loss of faith also?
that was in fact a little different, I think. The golden calf was together when the children of Israel left Egypt, a lot of Erev Rav went up with them, because Egypt was a big empire in those days. I think that, you know, they got kind of dazzled by technology, and they were like, at this point, they were still caught by the law. This is what happens. They became, it said, you remember, it says the chomer, the material which they got caught in their hearts, the sin where you get caught by God in your heart. They had got dazzled, looking, instead of worshiping God, thinking, oh, you know, and getting caught into this very different way of looking at life. Instead of looking through the way of giving, the way of faith, they were looking at what they could receive. And that's how they got caught by Pharaoh. I think it's a fascinating understanding. Sorry about that. Is that coming from my equipment? Weird noises came. Right. Oh, Michelle, is that you? Who's
No, I think Ziva needs to mute
Eva?
herself.
Okay, I'm oh dear, somebody. I'm gonna try and mute everybody. There you go. Oh, that's better, isn't it? Okay, right. So we're back to the Torah. Yeah. Now, where was the bit we were looking for? Oh, here we go. And I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go except with a strong hand. All right. ושלחתי את ידי והכיתי את מצרים בכל נפלאותיי שאעשה בקרבו, ואחרי כן ישלח אתכם. And I will stretch forth my hand, and I will smite the Egyptians with all my wonders, okay, which I will do in their midst, and only after that he will send you away. Now, there was another bit. Well, never mind. Let's go first back to where we were in the letter. ועתה בואו נבוא לפרש לכם בעזרת השם יתברך בשורת הגאולה ושליחות משה. And now I want to now explain to you, with the help of God, may be blessed, the message of redemption and Moses' shlichut. Do you say that in English? Role, katuv. Vayan Moshe, and Moses said, Vayomer v'hen lo yaminu li. And he said, listen, I can come and tell the people all this, but they're not going to believe me. Ki yomru lo nireh lech Hashem. They said, God didn't appear to you. Perush, explanation. Dekevan sheped kedushaya b'galut, because the malchut of Kedusha was in exile, all right, they're not using their faith, okay? They're stuck with their wills to receive for themselves alone. How they're not going to believe me. They're not in a situation of faith. He knew what their mental, spiritual situation really was, and it wasn't good. That's how they got into servitude in the first place. All right. So he said, listen, they're not in a place of using faith. I can go along and tell them that, you know, God's going to come now and going to rescue you, redeem you, but they're not going to believe me because they can't hear what I'm going to be able to say. All right. And that's the inner meaning of I'm heavy of speech and heavy of tongue. What is he talking about? He's saying that their malchut, okay, which is peh, all right, isn't functioning properly with them. The malchut is not in the way of faith, in the way of giving. And this is Moses, who is the shepherd of faith. He becomes known as the shepherd of faith. Why has he become known as the shepherd of faith? Because he was the one who actually brought faith to the children of Israel. And he maintains, Lifnei Hashem Yitbarach, Vein lo yaminu li. Listen, you know, I can tell them, but they're not going to believe me because they haven't got the facility of using faith right now. Because even if I connect Israel with me, I join together with them, they join together with me, and I bring them some sort of light. Hello, klipat paro, they're so entwined with this klipa Pharaoh, which is the the will to receive yourself alone. Is sucking out and damaging all the light from them. And even though they really are united with me, nevertheless, they're not going to listen to my voice. Perush, explanation. שבעוד שיש להם שליטה לקליפת פרעה, ופה ודיבור בגלות, מכל מקום, אם היו מאמינים בראי מהימנה כראוי, היו יכולים בני ישראל לשמוע בקולו של משה, שהוא למעלה מפה ודיבור, ואם היו מתחזקים בזה, ודאי היו ניצולים מקליפת פרעה. Explanation. Because whilst they're still under the governance of this, klipa of Pharaoh, and the Malchut, okay, Peh v'Dibur is words from Malchut, is in exile, all right, out of the framework of holiness. They can't hear him. Nevertheless, Mikol Makom, if they would have believed in Moshe Rabbeinu as is fitting, then Israel would have been, the children of Israel would have been able to hear the voice of Moshe. Moshe is actually a higher level than the Malchut. Moshe is the level of the Zerampin. He's more connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay? That's why it says Kol Shel Moshe. Kol, voice, is Zerampin. Mouth and speech is Malchut. He's actually at a higher level. If they've been able to listen to him, if they've been able to have belief in him, okay, because they're not at his level, he's higher level than they are. So in order for them to connect with him, they have to believe in him, okay? Like it says, Ve'aminu b'Hashem u'Moshe avdo. They believed in Hashem and in Moses, his servant. Why do you have to believe in Moses? You can see Moses. Why do you have to believe in him? But he's actually spiritually at a higher level than they were. So they actually do have to have belief in Moses. And if they would strengthen themselves with that, then for sure they would have been saved from the klipa of Pharaoh. And really everything that we're learning here today, we can apply to ourselves completely. Okay, it's absolutely telling us such an amazing information about how we get into exile from ourselves, okay, because we forget the value of the tzaddik within us. The tzaddik within us is our soul within us. We forget to listen to our souls, or we think that our souls are not worthy, or we think that our souls are too small, or we think that our soul, doesn't have much to say on whatever trouble we're in, or on the present time. And because we think that, then that is that, all right? But in fact, if we were really being able to listen to the Moshe within us, to the soul within us, to the Yosef within us, okay, to the Neshama within us, then we don't need to fall into our own exiles. Okay. Now, we are 8:32. All right. I think the best thing for me to do, if everybody's okay with this, is we stop here, all right, and we go on next week. Would you like that? Because I think it's a fascinating letter, because next week is going to go on and discuss the signs that God gave Moses to show the children of Israel. All right. Maybe one more paragraph to finish this piece off. And this is why Moses made a complaint before God. Because if they say God didn't appear to you, in the way we've said, you're saved, they're in the grip of this sort of idea of following the will to receive oneself alone, okay, which entices a person, all right, and makes them think that the tzaddik or the soul within us isn't of any value, okay, new governance arose within them. At the time when they were in descent to their will to receive, now they will deny the greatness of Moshe, the faithful shepherd, because he's at a higher level, and they will deny that because they won't understand it, and because they can't get it in their understanding, and they're not knowing, they're not using now the faculty of faith. How then can Moses get them out of this? Because it really is a very strong and bad klipa. And this is why God gave to 3 signs that Moses will show them to the children of Israel. And he taught him to show these signs to the children of Israel in a specific order. And God promised him that God will help him from heaven, that he will manage to show them this. And when the children of Israel will have received from Moses these signs, and then they will be able to hear what Moses is saying. And then he will be able to redeem them from this bitter exile. Okay, great. So let's stop here. All right.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, you're welcome. Wait a minute. Let me just stop the wasn't I showing that? Couldn't you see that? Oh dear. I'm so sorry. I think I forgot to share that last piece. I apologize. So, you know, when I don't have 2 screens. They say that when you use Zoom, you should really have 2 screens. I don't have 2 screens. So if you don't see it and you want to, you should always call out. I'm sorry about that. I forgot to press the button. All right, my dears. Okay, so all right, we'll carry on next week with the signs that Moses received.
Used.
Yes, used. Yeah. Okay. Wow, Rachel.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, a lot of food for thought.
Oh my goodness, totally. I mean, yeah.